911, where's your emergency?
Can getting a university degree kill a person? What a stupid question, you say. Of course not.
In the bathroom, but your head's missing. But what?
Now stop for a second and imagine you are 100,000 in debt. Imagine that this figure is a student debt. Imagine watching the balance grow every month. Imagine the feeling of despair as your debt grows and you can't find a job, and the feeling that the noose is slowly tightening and looms larger and larger. So, after all, can getting a university degree kill a man? Here is a story. Jason Yoder, a 35 years old with a degree in organic chemistry from Illinois State University, graduated in summer of 2006 and was unable to find a job despite sending out dozens of resumes. He watched his loan balance grow, and Jason had to move back in with his mom, who lived in a small trailer home in the small city of Normal. Typical boring US story, huh? Until 2007, when his mother, a university professor, found his body in one of the labs on the campus. He committed suicide after collectors urged him to sell his mother's house to pay his student loans. And Jason wasn't the first suicide because of student debt, and unfortunately, it will not be the last. It seems like something is very wrong with the university and student loan system.
As I said, education seems to be the great equalizer. Right now, it feels so unequal for me.
But in order to better understand this problem and phenomenon and why a young man who had such great potential committed suicide, we must disassemble everything into small pieces. We have to roll back about 6 years before Jason's tragic death. And the first, most important part of this puzzle is the price, or the total cost to obtain a degree. Let's be honest, price is the first thing we check while choosing any product or service. If you want something of good quality, you have to pay for it respective sum of money. It's an axiom. We can assume that paying $200,000 for 4 years of college should get you a high-quality education, right?
I can add this to my resume and get a job that actually will pay.
Or at least you expect your elite diploma will help you get your dream job, give you an advantage over other applicants at your ideal company.
It was kind of depressing because you're like graduating from Harvard, and then I was like in my parents' house in Atlanta, like unemployed.
And Jason Yoder likely had just such a picture in mind when he took out loans. Just like thousands of other US students taking out massive student loans. He thought that the more he invested in his education, the more his education would pay off. There is a bias in such a consideration. It's like when you buy a car. The more it costs, the faster it should be. But does this rule work with university degree?
I don't know why it costs so much.
Because the administrators are all making bank. So all these kids, generations are in debt because they have to take these student loans because college is more expensive than ever before.
The Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity provide us with an answer. They have researched and analyzed more than a quarter of US universities, and what they have discovered is this. Your eventual salary depends not on the type of university or the cost of education. It depends more on the type of study you choose. So 6 years after enrolling, Harvard alumni earn average $96,000 per year compared to $60,000 average annual tuition. But average is a very tricky word.
I'm about 134.
I owe $108,137.48 in student loans.
What people don't tell you is that if you choose to study English language and literature at Harvard at cost of $35,000 a year, you can expect to earn around $33,000 annually.
Are you a doctor or a lawyer?
I'm a doctor, but not the kind that you want. I'm a doctor of ministry.
While if you choose to study computer science at a cost of $50,000 a year, a few years later you can expect to earn at least $120,000 per year. And when Jason's story was posted on several different sites in 2007, the internet chatter wasn't always kind to the dead man. While many expressed great sympathy for Yoder and ranted against the student lending system, others were quick to invoke the personal responsibility argument and denigrate him. But the truth is that this is not an isolated case of one individual. The same patterns plays out throughout the United States.
What does college mean to you? Is it the same as university? Anxiety?
According to research, within 10 years of graduating from college, 99% of students in engineering programs have fully recovered the cost of college. But the same is true for only 33% of communications and journalism students and a paltry 2% of psychology students. The median psychology student has to wait for 23 years before return on investment turns positive. After 40 years, only 71% of psychology students have achieved a positive ROI. And some people, unfortunately, don't even get an opportunity to work.
I've left university this time a year ago, and I haven't been employed since.
So the price doesn't always reflect quality, which could be very confusing for the customer. But what is absolutely clear and not confusing at all, how much you will owe. It takes years or even decades to become debt-free.
What do people think is the average amount of time it takes to pay off the student loans in America?
21 years.
21 years.
21 years is the average.
With the average payment being $500 per month.
And here we come to another problem with the price of college or university degree. Are US universities such that good that people have to pay a premium price and drown in debt like Jason? And let's be honest, Americans are always proud of their country, and that's true of universities too.
America is the best country in the world, can you believe it?
Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Yale, Princeton, Berkeley. No matter which ranking you check, you will see these names at the top of the lists. But wait, all these famous US universities are ranked alongside UK, European and Asian institutions. So logically, you would think Oxford or Tokyo University must be as pricey as Harvard, right? The true answer is shocking. For instance, in 2022, Oxford student will pay £9,000 or around $11,000 for their education. And relatively speaking, it's not a big sum of money, as most UK families will bring in about $40,000 a year. So it costs just 25% of families' annual income to study at one of the world's most respected universities.
We have the best student support package in the UK.
Remember this number, only 25%. We will come back again to this fact later. Government regulations make higher education in England affordable. Undergraduate tuition is limited to £9,250 per year for home students. If their grades don't quite merit admittance to Oxford, UK students can find numerous study programs under $5,000 a year or even free.
There was a decision to be made, and I was thinking, okay, I can go and drive 2 hours away from where I was raised my entire life and go $100,000 into debt. But you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna go to Europe, and to this day, it's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made.
In Germany, the country with the strongest economy in Europe, the situation is even more drastically different. In 2014, Germany officially eliminated tuition for most bachelor's and many master's degree students, regardless of country of origin. Students must still consider administrative fees, the cost of living, and the expenses required to fund the visa process, but going to college in Germany is nominally free to all. Let's look to Asia, whose universities are also on the list of 20 best. The University of Hong Kong has an average tuition fee of $5,300 for locals. The University of Tokyo only $4,000. So the very unpleasant truth for US citizens is that people in Europe and Asia spend from 0 to 10% of their income on education, not even close to 80 or 100% in the US. Here in America, it's a disaster, and no matter which university you choose, your family budget will feel it. It's an illness that pervades the entire system, not only top universities.
And the diploma?
Yes, the most expensive piece of paper I own.
There have been no epidemiological studies attempting to find a correlation between student loan indebtedness and suicide or suicide attempts, but experts would not be surprised to find one. A statement published by the American Association of Suicidology notes there is a clear and direct relationship between the rates of unemployment and suicide. One world, one planet, many nations, but two different approaches. One group of students are enjoying their life, their first years of freedom, and their first job. The others are saddled with the student loan debt in the tens of thousands of dollars, anxiety, depression, and even suicidal thoughts. So, how did we get here? Why did student debt haunt Jason Yoder several years after graduation until he became desperate and depressed? For Jason Yoder, the problem began the same day he sent his first resume and realized that he wouldn't be able to find a job. For the rest of the country, the problems began 30 years ago, when state legislators began spending less and less per student on higher education. Already a disaster, things took another turn for the worse in 2008.
The amount of student loan debt Americans hold is at a record high.
Overall state funding for public 2- and 4-year colleges for the 2017-18 school year had fallen more than $6.6 billion below what it was in 2008, just before the Great Recession fully took hold. And in the most difficult years after the recession, colleges responded to significant funding cuts by increasing tuition, reducing faculty, limiting course offerings, and in some cases closing campuses. And a number of small schools have had to shut down entirely. For instance, Bloomfield College in New Jersey, founded in 1868, was forced to close after a decades-long struggle against declining enrollment. And Bloomfield is not alone. Judson College in Alabama, Becker College in Massachusetts, and Concordia College, New York, are among the many universities who are closing their doors.
The Board of Trustees voted to close and has notified the state. The college has been open for 157 years.
And of course, in Illinois State University, Jason's alma mater was not excluded. It was under pressure and financial scrutiny for many years. So it's no big surprise that student costs were increasing when Jason became a student and continued for many years after his death. But you know, of course, with every challenge you face, there is a hidden opportunity that will lead you down the path of wealth and money. And universities and colleges discover this crazy opportunity. The country's most elite institutions quickly realized how to make up for the cuts. They started looking for richer students. Once sustainable public funding was removed from these schools, they started acting more like businesses. State cutbacks didn't necessarily make colleges more efficient, which was the hope. They made colleges more entrepreneurial, and that's what happened. When some university administrators started competing for full freight paying students to help subsidize less affluent students, other colleges got wise to their racket and it became a spending arms race. More and more universities had to participate, including private colleges unaffected by state cuts, just to keep their application numbers up. And that's why some universities began enrolling more full-paying foreign and out-of-state students to make the difference. For example, over the past decade, Purdue University has reduced its in-state student population by 4,000, while adding 5,000 out-of-state foreign students, paying triple the tuition.
The U.S. attracts more than 1 million international students each year, the highest number of foreign students in the world.
Universities move away from working to educate people in their region to competing for the most elite and wealthy students unprecedentedly. They started giving fewer grants but began earning more. They became business, and here is where all the problems began. To provide better service, not knowledge, colleges spend a startling amount of money on their non-teaching staff. Some of these people are librarians, or career or mental health counselors who directly benefit students. Still, many others do tangential jobs that may have more to do with attracting students than with learning. Many US colleges employ armies of fundraisers, athletic staff, lawyers, admissions and financial aid officers, diversity and inclusion managers, building operations and maintenance staff, security personnel, transportation workers, and food service workers. And as a very basic example, college is very expensive in the US for the same reason that the price tag of MRI, magnetic resonance imaging in a hospital.
I got a bill in the mail for the MRI.
How much are they charging you for the MRI?
$8,066.24.
There is no central mechanism to control price increases. Universities extract money from students because they can. It's an inevitable outcome of unregulated fee structure. So, be honest, how do you like this business approach? It leads many students like Jason to the point of no return. And now we can dive deeper and find out how these businesses work and how they make money. If you want to get a full understanding of any business, look at its profit and loss statement. The answer is always hiding in the revenues and expenses. In the academic year of 2019-2020, US public universities and colleges in the United States received approximately $83 billion of revenue from tuition and fees charged to students. A further $33 billion came from federal grants and contracts. Tuition and fee paid by students represents a large share of the funding pie for public colleges and universities.
Leaders are calling for students to pay more for their education to protect universities from spending cuts.
For example, Michigan State makes 72% of its revenue from tuition fees. That is more than $1 billion. At Texas State University at San Marcos, it's more than 50%, about $375 million. And during the last 10 years, these numbers for 95% of universities have only increased. Public universities are very dependent on tuition fees and the number of students. And Illinois State, where Jason was a student, is a classic large public university with more than 18,000 students. But the story is totally different when it comes to private universities, and their profit and loss statements looks more attractive. This is where the money-making machine really shines. Private universities also generate revenue by charging students tuition, but you might be surprised to learn it's not the primary source of their income. At Harvard, for example, tuition fees account for only 17% of all revenue. At the same time, their most significant source of income is their endowments, money that is invested in a college or university to support its mission. Schools that receive endowments may use this money to fund research projects or to expand aid packages for eligible students. And philanthropy makes up 49% of university revenue, almost half. The story is the same for the Yale and the other top-rated universities. Endowments make up the lion's share of the university revenue. Endowment funds of colleges and universities in 2020 total about $691 billion. Huge numbers. Pause for a second and look at this table more precisely. How many students could get significant relief if only 10% of profit were diverted to help cover students' loan payments?
What's happened over the years is that burden of paying for college has shifted from state taxpayers to the families themselves.
Now let's imagine the dean of Harvard University wants to help an average student like John Doe from Texas or Jane Smith from Massachusetts. Can he do this by using endowment funds to pay down their debt? Unfortunately, no. All these endowments have a specific purpose and cannot be spent however the university leaders decide. Each university's endowment expenses dedicate only a small portion of money to students. But trust me, even considering all limitations of endowment funds, there is no doubt that hundreds of millions of dollars are accumulating in private universities' accounts. Even a quick look at their balance sheets allows us to see how rich they truly are. But that's not the end of this story. It will not be a complete story if we don't look deeper into an even more significant disparity between what they declare and what they do. So, let's dive into university spending. Every university likes to repeat its mission statement. It's always a set of beautiful phrases and inspiring ideas.
I hope Stanford helps remind us that the world is so much bigger than our imaginations can hold.
So, on paper, everything looks okay. And perhaps it sounds too simple and primitive, but there is another way to determine their mission. We can just check how universities spend their money. Their expenses reflect what they care about and what their real priorities are. And the biggest expense lines for every university is salaries and wages. Employees are the most crucial part of this pie. The most significant chunk of spending is dedicated to staff salaries and benefits. And at Yale University, staff costs made up 64% of university's expenses. At Harvard, 54%. At public universities, the situation is pretty the same. More than 50% of the budget of Texas State University of San Marcos goes to pay salaries. At Michigan State, it's about 69%. And, maybe these numbers would not be a problem if all that money was going to faculty staff and professors there to share with you all the most valuable knowledge they have. But that's not the case. US universities and colleges spend sterling money on their non-teaching staff. So all this spending helps US universities be more attractive to potential students, well marketed and well positioned in their rankings. They are very successful in their competition, even with their international rivals. Why? Because it's all about marketing. It's all about spending the money to climb higher and higher in rankings. The universities know how the ranking systems work and take it upon themselves to break the system.
Harvard is number one because it ranked third in outcomes, resources, and engagement.
So, based on all this data, the breakdown of the expenses, we can see quite a sad and disturbing picture. Students pay thousands of dollars to universities who then use this money to hire numerous star professors and marketers to be able to stay on the top of US and global rankings. and as a result to attract even more students who pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it looks like a wish circle. That's where they spend their money. That's what they care about.
And we are the first university in Kentucky to have achieved it.
But perhaps, having made it this far, you might raise the objection that universities help students a lot by giving out their scholarships and financial aid. Maybe you can ask, it's the second biggest expense in their budgets. No. The second largest chunk of university budgets go towards physical maintenance. Building repair, investment in campus facilities such as libraries, sports centers, student dorms, and other things that are very important. So on average, it's up to 20% of the total expenditure. The portion of their budget devoted to financial aid varies drastically from college to college, but it's typically not higher than 7–10% of all expenses. So, for instance, very generous and very liberal University of California allocates 15% of its money to student support. Ohio State University only 7%. University of Illinois also 7%. Colleges and universities telling us about mission and vision, but acting like businesses. They tell us that money is not the most important for them. But if money weren't their number one priority, if teaching and shaping young minds were the most important, universities wouldn't spend millions of dollars on staff to attract foreign students who pay triple the price. They wouldn't employ fancy, research-focused professors to get higher scores in the world rankings. They wouldn't spend millions on renovations for buildings like libraries in our digital 21st century. This system is broken, and it has to be fixed. But unfortunately, a broken system leads to broken lives. And this is why borrowers, students like Jason Yoder, literally pay with their lives for a university degree. So that's the story. You're welcome. Draw your conclusions.